Welcome to Closest to the People. I'm Crystal Froese. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to serve as a city councillor and a school board trustee. I've been a board member, I'm a community volunteer, and I have organized in my professional life more events than I can even count. So I have supported and worked with many volunteers. And one thing that I think we all know is that volunteers are the backbone of our communities. In fact, I'd even go further than that. Without volunteers, much of the community life, the quality of life we enjoy, simply wouldn't exist. If you enjoy performing arts, galleries, museums, local sports teams, parks, trails, healthcare supports, or youth programs, chances are, volunteers are absolutely making it happen. That person who is ushering at the theater for the local community production, a volunteer. A board member helping keep that museum open, that's a volunteer. And of course, coaches standing in the cold at a practice, those are volunteers. And if you've ever spent time in a hospital, even that cart that comes around with snacks, magazines, books, or simply a friendly smile on the chemo floor, yes, 100% a volunteer. Volunteers are woven into the fabric of our communities in ways most people don't really ever see, which brings me to today's question. Where have all the volunteers gone? Because if you've been involved in any organization over the past few years, you've probably noticed something has changed. Arts groups, sports organizations, charities, service clubs, the conversation is remarkably similar everywhere I go. People still attend the event. They all still buy the ticket. They still come and enjoy the festival. They'll support the cause. But finding people willing to help organize it, finding people willing to sit on a board, attend the meetings, take responsibility, and put in the hours behind the scenes, that's getting harder. A lot harder. And the numbers tell us this isn't just something we're imagining. In 2018, about 41% of Canadians volunteered with a charity or nonprofit organization. By 2023, that number dropped to 32%. Volunteer hours declined by hundreds of millions of hours across our country. Organizations everywhere are reporting the same thing. Fewer volunteers, fewer hours, and fewer people willing to take on the leadership role. So what's happening? I don't think there's one answer. Part of it is likely the pandemic. Well, I would think a lot of it is part of the pandemic and how it changed us. Because for 2 years, our routines changed. We stayed home, meetings moved online, events were canceled. We built new habits, and some of those habits have never changed back. And part of it is financial, let's be honest. Life feels harder for a lot of people right now. Housing costs more, food costs more, fuel costs more. Many families are working harder just to maintain the same standard of living they had a few years ago. The hours that might once have gone towards volunteering are now going towards earning income, caring for a family member, or simply catching their breath and taking some time out. Then there's social media. Now, before anyone starts typing a comment like, just hear me out, I don't believe social media is bad. It does help us connect. It helps us share information. It helps organizations reach people in ways they never could before. But I do wonder if it has changed how we participate in our communities. Years ago, if you cared about something, you might join a committee. You might volunteer at the event. You might serve on the board. Today, many people engage differently. They follow the organization on social media. They might share their posts. They comment. They react. And while those things do matter, they aren't the same as helping organize the fundraiser, or chairing the meeting, or managing the budget, or helping to recruit volunteers. Sometimes I wonder if social media gives us the feeling of participation without requiring commitment of participation. And then there's capacity. When I talk to people, I rarely hear, hey, I don't care. What I hear is, I'd love to help, but I just can't take on one more thing. And honestly, I believe them. People are caring for aging parents. They're helping adult children. They're raising grandchildren. They're working longer hours. They're managing their own health and well-being, and they're trying to navigate a world that feels busier and more demanding than ever. So maybe the issue isn't willingness, maybe it's capacity. And that's where this conversation can get kind of difficult because communities don't run themselves. The theater doesn't put on a play by itself, the festival doesn't organize itself, the museum doesn't open its doors by itself, the sports team doesn't coach itself. Someone has to do the work. Someone always has to do that work. The reality is that some organizations are already adapting. Some are reducing programming. Some are sharing volunteers. Some are partnering with other organizations, and some are even merging together. And yes, some are even closing altogether, which is so unfortunate. Because it's not because they aren't important, and it's not because they aren't needed, but because there simply aren't enough people available to sustain them. I also think we need to acknowledge something else here. For decades, much of the volunteer sector was carried by the baby boomers. They volunteered in incredible numbers. They sat on those boards. They coached the teams. They chaired the committees. They organized those festivals and fundraisers and those community events. And many still do, but as that generation ages out of volunteering, we can't simply assume that the next generation will volunteer in the same way. Because they grew up in a different world. They face different pressures. They have different expectations around work-life balance, family responsibilities, and personal time. And frankly, life may be harder for many of them financially than it was for the previous generation. And that doesn't mean that they care less. It may simply mean they engage differently. So perhaps the question isn't, how do we get people to volunteer like they did in 1985 or 2005? Maybe the better question is, how do we redesign volunteering for 2026 and beyond? Can we create shorter commitments, project-based opportunities, flexible schedules, virtual participation? Can we make it easier for people to contribute without feeling like they're signing away every Tuesday night for the next 5 years? Because if communities are going to thrive, we need volunteers. We always will. They do the work that actually supports what we feel is our quality of life. So perhaps the volunteer model itself needs to evolve. Maybe asking people to commit to monthly meetings for years at a time isn't realistic anymore. Maybe organizations need to rethink governance, recruitment, communication, and how they engage people. And maybe the question isn't how do we get people back to volunteering the way we did 20 years ago? Maybe the question is how do we build organizations that work for the realities of today? Because communities aren't something we consume, they're something we build. And building requires participation. So I'll leave you with a question. Think about the organizations, events, museums, sports teams, festivals, charities, and community services you value most. If they disappeared tomorrow because there weren't enough volunteers to sustain them, what would you miss? And more importantly, what role are you willing to play in making sure they're still here for years to come? And if you're part of an organization that's struggling with volunteer recruitment, governance, succession planning, community engagement, or simply figuring out what the future should look like, I'd love to hear from you. These challenges aren't unique in your organization. Communities across Canada are facing the same questions. Sometimes a fresh perspective can help identify new ways forward. And you can always connect with me through my website at crystalfroze.com. Thanks for listening today. I'm Crystal Froze, and this has been Closest to the People.